The cold metal walls of Haven 7 had been silent for 300 years. Deep in the Void Nebula, where no ships dared to travel, the research station drifted like a ghost through space. Inside its frozen halls, machines hummed quietly, keeping their precious cargo alive. Elena Rodriguez opened her eyes for the first time in 3 centuries. The cryogenic pod hissed as warm air filled her lungs. Her body felt stiff and cold, but she was alive. Around her, other pods began to open with soft clicking sounds. "Status report," she whispered, her voice rough from the long sleep. The station's computer answered in a calm voice. "Dr. Rodriguez, the awakening protocol has been triggered. All primary subjects are being revived. Current date, March 15th, 2847. Elena's heart sank. 300 years, Earth was gone. Everyone she had ever known was dead. But they had survived, just as she had planned. Jake Morrison climbed out of his pod, stretching his arms. He had been the station's chief engineer before the long sleep. Now he was something else entirely. "Elena, are we really the only ones?" "Left? We might be," she replied, helping Lisa Chun out of her pod. Lisa had been their best biologist, the one who made the genetic storage possible. But we have everything we need to change that. Captain Ryan Brooks was the last to wake up. He had been a military advisor when Earth died. His face was hard as he looked around the small room. "How many of us made it?" 12 survived the full sleep," Elena said. "But we have something more important. We have the genetic patterns of 50,000 humans stored in the deep freezers. We can bring them back." The group moved through this station's corridors. The walls were covered with frost, and their breath made small clouds in the cold air. Haven 7 had been a research station, studying new ways to preserve life. Now it was humanity's last hope. In the main lab, Elena activated the communication systems. Radio waves from across the galaxy filled the room with alien voices. The team listened in silence as they learned about their new universe, the Galactic. Council ruled everything now. 12 alien species had joined together to create what they called the perfect civilization. The crystal beings called Zephyrians controlled trade routes with their fast ships. The plant-like Vergani turned dead worlds into gardens. The energy creatures known as luminals served as judges and peacekeepers. "They're celebrating," Lisa said, her voice filled with anger. "Listen to this broadcast." An alien voice spoke in perfect galactic standard language. "Today marks the 300th anniversary of the Great Peace. When the violent human species was removed from our galaxy, we finally achieved harmony among all civilized races." Jake slammed his fist on the control panel. "Removed? They murdered billions of innocent people." Elena held up her hand for silence. She had found something else in the data streams. Secret files hidden deep in the Council's networks. Her face went pale as she read, "Ryan, come look at this. These are the real records from the war." Ryan Brooks read over her shoulder. His military training helped him understand the tactical reports quickly. This wasn't about human aggression at all. "Look at these dates. The Council attacked our colonies before we even knew they existed." The files painted a clear picture. Humanity had been developing new technologies that scared the Council leaders. Faster ships, better computers, new ways to modify genetics. The alien governments were afraid of becoming obsolete. We were going to share everything with them. Lisa whispered, "I remember the peace talks. We wanted to work together." Elena pulled up more files. The Council populations never knew the truth. Their governments told them we were dangerous monsters who had to be stopped. Most aliens think humans were some kind of plague that threatened galactic peace. "So what do we do now?" Jake asked. Elena looked at her small team. 12 people against an entire galaxy that thought they were extinct. But they had advantages the aliens couldn't imagine. Human determination, human anger, and human technology that had been developing in secret for 3 centuries. "We rebuild," she said simply. "But not the way we were before. We rebuild better, stronger. And when we're ready, we take back what was stolen from us." Ryan nodded slowly. "How long do we have before someone finds us?" "The nebula hides us from their sensors. We could have years, maybe decades before they discover this place. That should be enough time." Lisa was already working at another computer. "The genetic archives are intact. I can start the cloning process within days. With the right growth chambers, we could have 1,000 new humans within months. And I can modify the station," Jake added. "Turn it into a real base of operations. The aliens never developed the kind of defensive systems we'll need." Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries. Hope. Not just for survival, but for justice. The galaxy thought humanity was gone forever. They had built their perfect peace on the bones of her species. But they had made one critical mistake. They hadn't made sure every human was actually dead. "There's something else," she said, pointing to the alien broadcasts. "They're planning something called the Great Expansion. New colony worlds, new species to uplift into their civilization." Ryan's eyes went dark. "They're going to do it again. Find other species and either control them or destroy them. Not if we stop them first." Elena replied. She looked out through the station's small window at the swirling colors of the nebula. Somewhere beyond those gas clouds was a galaxy that celebrated the extinction of her people. Alien children grew up learning that humans had been evil creatures who deserved to die. But children also grew up hearing stories about monsters in the dark. Stories about things that hunt in the shadows and strike when you least expect them. Soon, those stories would be true again. Elena Rodriguez, last daughter of Earth, began to plan humanity's return to the stars. The galaxy had 300 years of peace built on lies and genocide. That peace was about to end. 2 months had passed since the awakening. Haven 7 looked nothing like the frozen tomb it had been before. Elena Rodriguez walked through corridors that now buzzed with activity. The walls were warm, the lights were bright, and the sound of human voices filled the air for the first time in 3 centuries. Jake Morrison had worked miracles with the old station. He stood in the main engineering bay, covered in grease and smiling like a child with a new toy. Around him, machines hummed as they built new equipment from salvaged alien technology. "Look at this," he called to Elena as she entered. "I've been studying the Zephyrian crystal technology from their old research ships. Their computers are fast, but they're designed for beings who think in straight lines. They never expected someone to approach problems the way humans do." Elena examined the hybrid device Jake had created. It looked like human engineering mixed with alien crystals. "Does it work?" "Better than work. It learns. Watch this." Jake typed a simple command. The crystal array lit up and began processing data at incredible speed. I fed it the galactic communication networks. It's already found 17 different ways to break their security codes. Across the station, Lisa Chun was having her own success. The biology labs had been transformed into something that looked like science fiction. Rows of growth chambers lined the walls, each one containing a developing human clone. "The first batch will be ready next week," Lisa told Elena as they walked between the chambers. "I've been careful to include genetic diversity from all Earth's populations. These won't be copies of us. They'll be new people with their own personalities." Elena stopped in front of one chamber. Inside, she could see a young woman who looked about 20 years old, floating in blue fluid. Sensors monitored her brain, activity and physical development. How much will they remember? Elena asked. Everything they need to know. I've been programming their minds with skills, languages, and basic knowledge. They'll wake up as functioning adults, but they'll still be individuals. Each one will have their own way of thinking. The woman in the chamber stirred slightly, as if she could hear them talking. Elena wondered what dreams she might be having in her artificial sleep. Captain Ryan Brooks had been busy too. The station's security center had become a war room filled with star maps and tactical displays. He was studying everything the aliens had shared about their military forces. They've gotten soft, he told Elena when she visited his command center. 300 years of peace has made them forget how to fight real wars. Look at these ship designs. He showed her pictures of alien warships. They were beautiful, with smooth curves and artistic decorations. But Elena could see what Ryan meant. They looked more like artwork than weapons of war. Their weapons are designed for crowd control and minor disputes, Ryan continued. They haven't fought a real enemy since they killed us. Their soldiers train for parades, not battles. What about their numbers? Elena asked. That's where it gets interesting. The Council has billions of citizens, but most of them don't even know about the military. The average alien thinks the galaxy is so peaceful that wars are impossible. Elena felt a cold smile cross her face. So they have no idea what's coming. None at all. But Elena, we need to be smart about this. We can't just attack them directly. We're still 12 people against a galaxy. We need to be ghosts in there. Machines until we're strong enough to fight openly. That evening, Elena called her team together in the station's main conference room. Through the windows, they could see new human clones moving around the laboratory sections. In just 2 months, their population had grown from 12 to almost 50. We need to talk about the next phase, Elena began. We can't stay hidden forever. Eventually, someone will discover this place. Jake nodded. I've been monitoring their patrol routes. The Council sends ships through this sector every few years, but they never come close to the nebula. Still, we should be ready too. Move if we have to. That's why I've been working on something special, Lisa said. She activated a holographic display that showed a human figure. But as they watched, the figure's skin changed color, growing scales like a reptile. Genetic modification, she explained. I can alter our DNA to make us look like any alien species. The changes aren't permanent, but they would last long enough for deep cover missions. Ryan leaned forward with interest. You mean we could have agents inside their governments? Exactly. Think about it. They believe all humans are dead. If someone who looks like a Zephyrian or a Verdani starts working in their systems, no one would suspect they're actually human. Elena felt excitement building in her chest. How long would the modifications take? About a week for each person. The process is uncomfortable, but not dangerous. I've already tested it on myself. Lisa touched a control, and her appearance shifted. Her skin became crystalline and transparent, exactly like a Zephyrian. The room fell silent as everyone stared at Lisa's transformed appearance. She looked like a completely different species, but her eyes were still human. This changes everything, Elena whispered Dot. Over the next few days, they developed their plan. Lisa would create modified agents who could infiltrate alien society. Jake would build the technology they needed to stay hidden and communicate across vast distances. Ryan would train their growing population in combat and tactics. But Elena had found something else in the alien data streams, something that made her blood run cold. They're going to do it again, she announced at their next meeting. The great expansion isn't just about new colonies. I've found the classified files. She showed them images of primitive alien species living on distant worlds, creatures who had just discovered fire or built their first cities, species that reminded Elena of humanity's own early development. The Council plans to uplift them into galactic civilization. But look at the fine print. Any species that refuses to join willingly will be eliminated as a threat to galactic peace. Jake slammed his hand on the table. They're going to commit genocide again. How many species this time? At least 30. Maybe more. Elena's voice was deadly quiet. They've learned nothing from what they did to us. They still think the answer to any problem is to destroy it. Ryan stood up, his military training taking over. Then we stopped them. All of them. How? Lisa asked. We're still just a few dozen people. Elena looked around the room at her team. These were the last free humans in the galaxy. The only ones who remembered what their species had really been like. The only ones who knew the truth about the Council's crimes. We become what they always said we were, she said finally. We become the monsters in their nightmares. We become the ghosts that haunt their perfect civilization. She activated the holographic display again, showing star maps of Council space. 12 homeworlds, each one protected by defenses that hadn't been tested in 3 centuries. They wanted us gone forever. They thought they had peace. Now we're going to show them what happens when you build your paradise on the graves of innocent people. The other humans looked at her with understanding. They had tried peace once. They had offered friendship and cooperation. The galaxy had answered with genocide. This time, humanity would speak in a language the Council would understand perfectly, the language of retribution. 5 years had changed everything. Elena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of what had once been Haven 7, but the old research station was gone. In its place was a massive complex that stretched through the nebula like a metal city in space. Thousands of humans walked through corridors that buzzed with activity day and night. The population counter on the wall showed 53,000 and growing. Every day, more humans emerged from the cloning facilities, ready to take their place. In the greatest mission their species had ever attempted. Agent Wells reports from Zephyr Prime, said Katie Wells, though she no longer looked human. Her skin had been changed to crystal, her eyes glowed with inner light, and her voice carried the harmonic tones of the Zephyrian species. She had spent 3 years working in the Council's intelligence division, and no one suspected she was the enemy they thought extinct. The Council is moving forward with a great expansion, Katie continued. They've identified 47 primitive species for uplift or elimination. The first strikes are planned for next month. Elena felt her jaw tighten. 47 species. Billions of innocent lives that would be snuffed out because they didn't meet the Council's standards of civilization. Ben Carter's voice came through the communication system. He was aboard the Council flagship Eternal Peace, disguised as one of the insect-like hive creatures. His modifications had been the most difficult, requiring him to grow an extra set of arms and compound eyes. The fleet commanders are confident, Ben reported. They're treating this like a parade mission. Most of their crews have never seen real combat. They think they're going to enlighten primitive savages, not fight a war. Maria Santos chimed in. From the agricultural world of Verdania, where she worked as a plant specialist. Her skin was green and bark-like, making her indistinguishable from the Verdani species. The terraforming equipment is being loaded onto colony ships as we speak. A plan to remake entire worlds to match Council specifications. Elena looked around the command center where her team had gathered. These weren't the same 12 people who had awakened 5 years ago. They were the leaders of a new humanity, stronger and more determined than their ancestors had ever been. Jake Morrison walked in, no longer the simple engineer he had once been. He now commanded an army of human technicians who had built wonders the galaxy had never seen. Their ships could move through space without being detected. Their weapons could disable alien vessels without destroying them. Most importantly, they had learned to think like predators. The mobile fortress is ready, Jake announced. We've taken everything we learned from Council technology and made it better. Earth 2 can support 5 million humans and move faster than any ship in their fleet. Lisa Chun had become something between a scientist and a goddess of creation. Her genetic laboratories could produce any kind of human needed for any mission. Soldiers, spies, pilots, engineers, all of them grown, with the knowledge and skills they would need. The infiltration teams are in position, Lisa reported. We have agents in every major council government, military command, and research facility. When we give the signal, they'll be ready to act. But it was Ryan Brooks who had changed the most. The former military advisor was now the commander of humanity's war machine. 50,000 human soldiers trained in combat techniques the aliens had never imagined. They fought like wolves, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Target analysis is complete, Ryan said, activating a holographic display of the galaxy. 12 Council homeworlds appeared as glowing dots surrounded by defensive networks. Their military doctrine hasn't changed in 3 centuries. They're still fighting the last war, not the one we're about to bring them. Elena studied the tactical display. Each world was protected by energy shields and automated defense platforms. On paper, they looked impossible to defeat. But the humans had advantages the Council couldn't understand. Phase 1 begins tonight, Elena announced. Our agents will disable communication networks and defensive systems. Phase 2 starts at dawn, simultaneous strikes on all 12 homeworlds. But remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We want prisoners, not corpses. The galaxy needs to see what their perfect council really is. Katie Wells spoke up from her crystal form. Elena, there's something else. I've been monitoring Council intelligence reports. They've detected some unusual activity in outer sectors. Nothing specific, but they're starting to ask questions. How long do we have? Elena asked. Maybe weeks, maybe days. They don't know what they're looking for, but if they find this base, then we move up the timeline, Elena decided. Ryan, can your forces be ready in 72 hours? They've been ready for months. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for us. Elena looked out through the observation windows at the swirling colors of the nebula. Beyond those clouds was a civilization that had murdered her people and built their paradise on human graves. For 5 years, she had planned this moment. 5 years of preparation, growth, and careful positioning. The Council thought they were safe in their perfect peace. Their citizens lived comfortable lives, never knowing that their governments were built on genocide. Their children grew up, learning that humanity had been monsters who deserved extinction. Tonight, those children would learn that monsters were real after all. Ben Carter's voice crackled through the communications again. Elena, I'm picking up fleet movement orders. The Great Expansion launch has been moved up. They're planning to begin the genocide campaign in 72 hours. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. 47 species about to die. Billions of lives that would be erased because they didn't meet Council standards. Just like humanity had been erased 3 centuries ago. Change of plans, she announced to her team. We don't wait for them to come looking for us. We don't wait for them to start their new genocide. We hit them now, before they can murder anyone else. She activated the station-wide communication system, her voice reaching every human in their hidden fortress. This is Elena Rodriguez speaking to all personnel. For 5 years, we have prepared for this moment. Tonight, humanity returns to the galaxy. Tonight, we show them what happens when you try to erase an entire species from existence. Through the station, 50,000 humans stopped what they were doing to listen to her words. They thought we were gone forever. They celebrated our extinction. They built their peace on our graves and planned to do the same to others. But they made one mistake. They didn't make sure we were all dead. Elena looked at her command team. Jake with his brilliant engineering mind, Lisa with her power over life itself, Ryan with his warrior's heart, and their agents scattered across enemy space. Today, the galaxy learns that humanity is not extinct. Today, they learn that we remember what they did to us. Today, they learn that the monsters they created in their nightmares have come home. The human fortress began to move through the nebula, heading toward the edge of Council space. Behind it came a fleet of ships designed for stealth and precision strike operations. The age of Council peace was about to end. The age of human retribution was about to begin. The attack began at exactly 0400 Galactic Standard Time. Across 12 different star systems, human forces emerged from the darkness, like ghosts coming to life. For 3 centuries, the Council homeworlds had known only peace. Today, they would. Remember what war looked like on Zephyr Prime. Katie Wells sat at her desk in the Council Intelligence Center, looking exactly like any other crystal being. Around her, Zephyrian analysts worked through the night shift, monitoring galactic communications for signs of trouble. They had no idea that trouble was sitting right next to them. Katie's fingers moved across, her control panel with practiced ease. To anyone watching, she was running routine security checks. In reality, she was uploading a virus that would cripple the entire planet's defense network. The virus had been designed by Jake Morrison himself, built to think like a human but disguise itself as normal Zephyrian code. Network integration at 90%, Katie whispered into her hidden communicator. Beginning final upload now. On the other side of the planet, Ryan Brooks led a strike team of 50 human soldiers through the crystal caves that housed Zephyr Prime's main defense grid. The soldiers moved silently, their equipment designed to be invisible to Zephyrian sensors. Each human had trained for this exact mission for 3 years. The Zephyrian guards never saw them coming. Ryan's team used non-lethal weapons that put the crystal beings into deep sleep without harming them. Within minutes, they had control of the entire defensive network. Zephyr Prime defenses are down, Ryan reported through the communication system. Moving to Phase 2. Similar scenes played out across 11 other worlds. On Verdania, Maria Santos walked through the gardens where she had worked for 3 years. The plant beings trusted her completely, never suspecting that the quiet botanist was actually a human spy. As she moved between the great tree cities, she sprayed a chemical compound that would put the Verdani defenders to sleep for hours. Human soldiers followed behind her, moving through the organic corridors like shadows. The Verdani had built there defenses to stop energy weapons and metal ships. They had never considered an enemy that could walk among them disguised as friends. Ben Carter's mission aboard the flagship Eternal Peace was the most dangerous. He stood on the bridge, still wearing his disguise as a hive creature, watching the Council admirals plan their genocide campaign against primitive species. Begin transmission to all colony fleets, Admiral Christic announced. Operation Great. Expansion launches in 6 hours. All target species have been classified as unsuitable for uplift. Elimination protocols are authorized. Ben felt rage burn in his chest, but he kept his insect face calm. Around him, Council officers prepared to murder 47 entire species. They talked about it like a routine maintenance job. "Sir," Ben said, using the clicking language of the hive species, "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from our outer sensors." Admiral Christic turned to look at him. "What kind of readings?" "Unknown, sir. Should I investigate?" "Yes, but make it quick. We launch the expansion fleet soon." Ben's fingers moved across his control panel, but instead of investigating the energy readings, he was uploading commands that would disable the ship's weapons and engines. The other human agents had done their jobs perfectly. Now it was his turn. "Admiral," Ben said, his voice carrying false concern. "The energy readings are getting stronger. I think we might have a problem." Before Admiral Christic could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up with the same image. A human woman with determined eyes and graying hair looked out at them from displays across the ship. Elena Rodriguez began to speak. Her voice carried to every inhabited world in Council space. "Citizens of the Galactic Council, you have been living a lie for 300 years. Your leaders told you that humanity was extinct, destroyed for the good of galactic peace. They told you we were monsters, too dangerous to exist alongside civilized species. Today, you learn the truth." On Zephyr Prime, the crystal beings stopped their work to stare at the screens in confusion. On Verdania, the plant people gathered around communication terminals, their leaves rustling with worry. Across all 12 homeworlds, billions of aliens saw a human face for the first time in their lives. Elena continued her message. As human forces completed their captures of the council governments, 300 years ago, your leaders ordered the genocide of my species, not because we were violent, but because they feared our potential. We had offered friendship and cooperation. They answered with extinction. The broadcast showed classified documents that Katie Wells had stolen from council archives. Records of the real war, proving that humans had tried to make peace before the council attacked their colonies. Evidence that the genocide had been planned years in advance. "But we survived," Elena said, her voice growing stronger. "And today, we have prevented your leaders from committing the same crime against 47 other species." The Great Expansion was not about uplift or civilization. It was about murder. The evidence was overwhelming. Council citizens watched in horror as classified files revealed the truth about their government's plans. The primitive species they had been told would be helped were actually scheduled for extermination. On the flagship Eternal Peace, Admiral Christic stared at Ben Carter with growing realization. "You're not Hive at all, are you?" Ben smiled, his insect face shifting back to human features as the genetic modifications wore off. "No, Admiral, I'm human. And you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit genocide." Across the galaxy, similar reveals were happening as human agents dropped their disguises. The Council forces, trained for peace and ceremony, surrendered without significant resistance. Most of them were too shocked to fight. Elena's broadcast reached its conclusion. "The old Galactic Council is finished. For too long, your leaders have ruled through fear and lies. They convinced you that peace required the death of anyone different. They made you celebrate the extinction of my people." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But we are not here for revenge alone. We are here for justice. And justice means that no species will ever again be deemed too dangerous to exist." The communication ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Then, slowly, the responses began. On Verdania, young plant beings who had never known the truth about human extinction began protesting in the streets. On Zephyr Prime, crystal workers demanded answers from their government officials. Across Council space, populations that had trusted their leaders for centuries began to question everything they had been taught. Some alien groups chose to surrender immediately. Council military commanders, realizing their governments had lied to them about everything, ordered their ships to stand down. Others tried to resist, but their weapons and tactics were centuries out of date. Elena stood in the command center of Earth 2, watching reports come in from across the galaxy. 12 homeworlds captured with minimal casualties. 47 primitive species saved from genocide. The truth finally revealed to billions of aliens who had never known they were living in a civilization built on murder. Jake Morrison appeared beside her, grinning with exhaustion and triumph. All primary objectives secured. The Council leadership is in custody, and their expansion fleets have surrendered. Lisa Chun joined them, her face showing the relief of someone who had carried a terrible burden for years. "Elena, we did it. We actually did it." Ryan Brooks's voice came through the communication system from Zephyr Prime. "All military assets secured. Resistance is minimal. Most Council forces are refusing to fight once they learn the truth." Elena looked out at the stars through the observation windows. 300 years ago, humanity had been erased from this galaxy. Today, they had returned not just as survivors, but as liberators. The reckoning was complete. Now came the harder task of building something better from the ashes of the old order. 6 months after the reckoning, Elena Rodriguez walked through the great assembly hall on New Geneva Station. The massive space station had been built at the center of the galaxy, far from any single species territory. Here, representatives from over 60 different civilizations gathered to write the laws that would govern their new universe. The hall buzzed with voices speaking in dozens of languages. Zephyrian crystal beings sat next to furry Kalari bird people. The aquatic deepsworn floated in water tanks, while silicon-based Rockin communicated through light patterns. All of them were species that the old council had planned to destroy or control. Elena took her place at the speaker's platform, looking out at the assembled delegates. Some faces showed trust, others carried suspicion, but all of them were here by choice. No one was forced to join the new Galactic Assembly. "Friends," Elena began, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "6 months ago, we revealed the truth about the old council's crimes. Today, we decide what kind of galaxy we want to build together." In the front row, former council leaders sat under guard. Admiral Christic, who had planned the Great Expansion genocide, looked older and smaller than he had on his flagship. The crystal being who had ordered humanity's extinction 3 centuries ago could barely meet Elena's eyes. "Some of you have asked why we don't simply execute these criminals," Elena continued. "The answer is simple. We refuse to become the monsters they said we were. Justice is not about revenge. It's about making sure these crimes never happen again." Jake Morrison stood at a technical display, showing the delegates plans for the new galactic infrastructure. His engineering teams had been working around the clock to design systems that no single species could control or abuse. "The new communication network will be completely open," Jake explained. "No government can cut off information to their people. No leader can hide the truth about what they're doing. Every citizen of every world will have access to the same facts." Lisa Chun presented her proposals for the Genetic Heritage Project. Behind her, holographic displays showed the DNA patterns of hundreds of species, including many that had been thought extinct. "We found genetic samples from 43 species that the old council claimed to have uplifted," Lisa announced. In reality, these people were eliminated and replaced with modified versions that were easier to control. "We can bring back the originals if their families want them restored." A delegate from the Verdani stood up, her bark-like skin trembling with emotion. "My grandmother's people, the true forest dwellers, were changed by council science." "You can really bring them back?" "We can," Lisa replied, "but only if you choose it. We will never force genetic changes on anyone, the way the council did." Ryan Brooks had transformed from a military commander into a peace coordinator. His new job was to help resolve conflicts between species without violence. He stood before a group of young aliens, many of whom had never seen a human before the reckoning. "The old council taught you that different species couldn't live together without strong control," Ryan said. "They were wrong. Look around this station. 60 different kinds of beings working together, making decisions together. No one species in charge of all the others." A young Zephyrian raised her crystalline hand. "But what if someone tries to start a war? What if another council forms?" "Then we stop them," Ryan answered simply. but not the way the old council did. We don't destroy entire species because we're afraid of what they might do. We face problems when they happen together. Elena visited the memorial section of the station every day. The walls showed the names and images of every species that had been destroyed by council policies over the centuries. Humanity's section took up an entire wall, but they were not alone. 47 other species had been saved from the Great Expansion, and many more had been rediscovered in hidden colonies. Then Carter, no longer disguised as an insect creature, worked with former council intelligence officers to uncover more hidden crimes. Every day, they found evidence of species that had been eliminated, cultures that had been erased, and truths that had been buried. "It's worse than we thought," Ben reported to Elena during one of their daily briefings. The council didn't just commit genocide. They rewrote history itself. Entire civilizations were written out of existence. "But we're writing them back in," Elena replied. "Every truth we uncover, every species we restore, every lie we expose makes the galaxy a little more honest." The transformation wasn't easy. Some former council worlds struggled with the revelation that their entire way of life had been built on murder. Others embraced the changes, eager to make up for centuries of unknowing participation in genocide. Katie Wells had become the Assembly's chief diplomat, helping species learn to work together without a controlling authority above them. Her experience, living as different alien types, made her uniquely qualified to understand various perspectives. "The hardest part," Katie told Elena during a quiet moment, "is convincing people that they can govern themselves. The council taught everyone that they needed strong leaders to keep them safe. Now they have to learn that freedom is worth the risk." Maria Santos led the terraforming projects that were creating new worlds for displaced populations. Unlike the old council's approach of forcing planets to match their specifications, the new projects adapted to what each species actually needed. "We're not making worlds for ourselves," Maria explained to a group of refugee families. "We're making worlds for you. Tell us what your people need to be happy, and we'll grow it." Elena often stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, looking out at the traffic moving between the stars. Ships from dozens of species traveled freely, carrying trade goods, messages, and people who wanted to see the galaxy for themselves. The old council had achieved peace through fear and control. The new assembly was building something different. Cooperation through choice and trust. It was messier, louder, and sometimes frustrating. But it was honest. 300 years ago, Elena had gone to sleep believing that humanity was about to join a galactic community as equals. She had awakened to find her species extinct and the galaxy celebrating their murder. Now, finally, that dream of cooperation was becoming real. The stars looked brighter from New Geneva Station. Ships moved between them, carrying not conquerors or victims, but neighbors. Species that had been hidden, oppressed, or nearly destroyed were finding their voices again. Humanity had returned with retribution, but their greatest revenge was proving that the galaxy could be better than those who had tried to destroy them. The council had built their perfect peace on graves and lies. The new assembly was building their imperfect peace on truth and hope. Elena Rodriguez, last daughter of Earth, first voice of the new galaxy, smiled as she watched the ships dance between the stars. The universe was vast and full of different kinds of life. For the first time in centuries, that diversity was seen as a strength rather than a threat. The age of fear was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and in the memorial wall where humanity's names were carved in stone, new words had been added by vote of the entire assembly. They tried to silence us. We chose to sing louder,